Good morning. We're coming on the air because there is breaking news at this hour. A guilty verdict in Hunter Biden's federal gun trial in Wilmington, Delaware. The president's son facing 3 felony counts, accused of lying on a federal form about drug use when he bought a gun in 2018, saying he was not a drug user, and prosecutors arguing he illegally had that gun for 11 days. After deliberating for about an hour on the first day, about 2 hours today, they have found him guilty on all 3 charges. Count 1, making a false statement in the purchase of a firearm. Guilty of count 2, making a false statement related to information required to be kept by a federal licensed firearms dealer. And guilty on count 3, possessing a firearm by a person who is an unlawful user or addicted to a controlled substance. So again, the breaking news at this hour, Hunter Biden found guilty on all 3 felony charges. Let's get right to Terry Moran outside the courthouse. Terry?
That's right, David. You've got it. All 3 counts, guilty as charged. About 3 hours of deliberation. 1 hour yesterday, 2 hours today. The jurors got to work, and they came through with this verdict. Each of these counts required the jurors to take into account what Hunter's defense was here, which was basically that while he had abused drugs, as he confessed in his memoir, Beautiful Things, as the jurors heard plenty of evidence about, at that time, Hunter Biden said he didn't testify, but his lawyer presented evidence that he did not feel that he was actually abusing drugs at that time and therefore was not guilty of these crimes. The jurors rejected that, guilty on all 3 counts. Hunter Biden arrived in court just before the jury was brought in and read the verdict.
Terry, let me ask you about the show of support in the front rows of that courtroom. As we know, the First Lady, Jill Biden, there supporting her son every day but one in this trial. Multiple members of the family and friends close to Hunter Biden, all there. We know in the closing arguments, the prosecution, well aware of that image right there in front of the jurors, saying of family members, the First Lady, the friends who had gathered. Essentially, that does not matter here.
That's exactly what they said, David. None of that matters. Pointing at the Biden family, at the First Lady, who was here almost every day, took a whirlwind trip to France to join the president for the D-Day commemorations, and came right back to be with her son. And yet, it was part of the closing argument of prosecutors there. Prosecutors saying no one is above the law, no matter what their name is, no matter who is in court.
And Terry, the defense, Hunter Biden's defense team had tried to argue in closing arguments that the prosecution, while they had ample evidence that Hunter Biden was a drug user, that the window of time directly surrounding the purchase of the gun, the defense had argued the prosecution had not made the case that he was using drugs in that, that window of time, that very small window of time. But apparently the jury didn't buy that.
They didn't buy it, and in part, David, because of the law that the judge read to them. The judge, as is customary, as is part of the process, reads the jurors the law that they will apply to the facts that they heard in this case. And part of that law was that drug use for the purpose of this law did not have to occur on the day that Hunter Biden bought the weapon and checked that federal form, that it could be evidence of a pattern of drug abuse or drug addiction around that. And that certainly was clear in this case. So the defense was fighting an uphill battle, not only really against the facts, but against the law as the judge gave it to the jurors here. Now, I should say that in court, the defense, as is customary, right after the conviction was announced, renewed an appeal for an acquittal from the judge, in order to preserve an appeal, and gave notice essentially that they will appeal this case.
So what happens now, Terry, legally to Hunter Biden?
Sentencing next. And these are very serious federal crimes. These are crimes that carry very heavy prison sentences, 10 years each for the false statement and 5 years for the illegal possession of the weapon. Now, that is highly unlikely to be applied to Hunter Biden, anything like that in this case. Experts tell us that for a first offender like him, someone who did not use the gun at all, he just kind of bought it and stuck it in his car, there's no evidence that he was going to use it in any kind of a crime. It would be highly unlikely for Hunter Biden to see prison time. But these are, as I say, very serious charges, and it may well be that prosecutors will ask for some prison time, given the nature of the charges and given what others might face.